Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to have a look at another collaboration beer. This one is half German on the home side and half American on the away side. Both of these breweries have featured on the channel before. The German one though not for a very long time. The American one has featured quite regularly, and both of these names really garner a hell of a lot of respect in the beer world actually, and I'm really curious to see what they can put together when they get together and start brewing. This is apparently their second collaboration in quite quick succession actually. So for this review then, as I say, for the home side we are going to go down to Germany and we're having a look at another beer from Bitburger Brauerei, who of course hail from Bitburg in Rheinland-Pfalz near Luxembourg in western Germany. So this one is the triple hopped lager. It comes in at 5.8% ABV and it's brewed in collaboration with Sierra Nevada, who of course are originally from Chico in California over in America. One of the premier names when it comes to the American craft beer scene. I've had a lot of good beers from these guys over the years, and Bitburg of course are the most popular brand of draft beer in Germany these days, which is, it's pretty impressive actually. But yeah, Bitburg, from what I remember, is a fairly nice pilsner, but it's not quite as artisanal and things as you can get from some of the smaller local breweries and stuff. Germany of course really prides itself on its kind of regionality and locality and things like that, and Bitburger are one of the kind of bigger industrial breweries of course, but compared to some of the other beers and things you can find, Bitburger isn't to be knocked. It is actually pretty nice, I have to say. I always enjoyed a little bit of Bitburger, but yeah, really curious to see how this one turns out. Both breweries have a very good pedigree of course, so it'll be interesting to see what they put together. So let's see how we get on with this one. As you can see, I'm having to use a little bottle cap here just to balance this can at the right angle so the light doesn't hit it, so hopefully that doesn't put you guys off the video too much, but that seemed to be the only way to stop the light hitting the can at an awkward angle and annoying the camera. But yeah, like I say, let's see how we get on with this one then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the breweries involved here before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery websites, the link to my other reviews that I've done both from Bitburger Brauerei and from Sierra Nevada Brewing Company. You will see more added to both of those lists at some point in the near future. There's all the usual social media down there as well. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the home page and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the German beers that I've reviewed for you, and another one for all the American beers. Both of those are being added to fairly regularly, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Bitburger Brauerei then, on to my brewing notes. So Bitburger Brauerei were founded back in 1817 by the master brewer Johann Peter Wallenborn, and this was when he built his own brewery. So he died in 1839, and then his wife Anna Katharina took over the running of the brewery until 1842, when their daughter Elisabeth married Ludwig Bertrand Simon, and he began running the company under the name Zum Simon Bräu. So from 1876, Ludwig's son Theobald started a mail order service, and so they started delivering their beers with horse-drawn carts, and then by 1877 the brewery were producing more than 1,000 hectolitres of beer per year. And they began to expand in the local area thanks to the railway being constructed. So the beers were also bottled for the first time in 1880 using corks, and the Pils was first introduced in 1883. So from 1907, Theobald's sons Joseph and Bertrand became the partners of the brewery, and they organised the drilling of the deep well for the brewery's water, and that remains in place to this day from what I understand. From 1913, this brewery was legally permitted to sell beer under the name Pilsner, and this was done under the name Original Simon Bräu Deutsches Pilsner. And this debate apparently had been created by the breweries from Pilsen over in Bohemia, who of course, Pilsen, the beers in Germany, their names all tend to be very regional, so the breweries in Pilsen didn't like the fact that other breweries around the German-speaking regions were selling beers under the name Pilsner because it was their local name. Understandable of course, but it doesn't seem to be much of a big issue these days. But following the First World War, the production of the Pilsner returned in 1919, and they set up a lab in 1921 for quality assurance. So Theobald, Hans and Bert Simon, the three sons of Bertrand, took over the business in 1935 as the fifth generation, and by 1938 they had grown the company to reach the production mark of 100,000 hectolitres of beer annually. So during the Second World War though, large chunks of the brewery were destroyed by the Allied bombing raids and the fighting and stuff like this, but they managed to get the brewery up and running once again quite quickly after the war, and in 1951 they introduced the 330ml bottles and also the Beta ein Bist slogan that has stayed with them ever since, and this just means in English, please a bit. This dates back, I think it was supposed to be something that one of the original owners had said or something like that, but this is an advertising slogan that they've had for a very long time. But they built a new brew house in 1958, which has now reached a total production of around 4 million hectolitres of beer today. So they've continually expanded this over the years. I think it grew very, very quickly. It was basically growing like 1 million hectolitres every decade, which is quite impressive when you look at the figures that are on the website. But the company passed on to the 6th generation of the family in 1975, and it's progressively grown to become the most popular brand of draft beer in Germany. I think very recently it's actually passed on to the 7th generation of the family as well. But in 2017 they produced a special beer called Bitburger Siebenzehn. 1817, which was to celebrate their 200th anniversary. Would have been really cool to review that one for you actually. But the brewery itself can be found in Bitburg in Rheinland-Pfalz, which is very close to the border with Luxembourg. And they do have a few different beers. There's the alcohol-free, there is the original Bitburger, and various other kind of things in there as well. Over the years they've also acquired a couple of different breweries, and there's 1 or 2 beers from these other breweries that they amalgamated that still survive as well. But yeah, mainly these guys are known for the Bitburger Pilsner beer. And you'll see the signs for this all over Germany. I think they sponsor a good couple of the football teams. I remember being at the Bundesliga games, and you would see the Bitburg signs. This was the kind of house beer, if you like. They had all their beers served to them from Bitburg and things like that. So pretty damn impressive actually. These guys are the biggest, as I say, the most well-known draft beer brand in Germany, and it's cool to see that they are doing little collaborations like this as well. But yeah, that's all I'm really able to tell you about Bitburger Brauerei for just now. In the 7th generation of it's a 7th generation family-owned business, which is pretty common in Germany. Quite often these businesses just pass down the various generations of the family. You find that with the very small breweries, and of course with the kind of medium and larger breweries as well. That's kind of a standard thing when it comes to Germany. But yeah, that's all you need to know about these guys for the moment. If you want to learn more, of course, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and of course you can check out Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate for more in-depth ratings on all the different beers that Bitburger have done. I think they've produced maybe about 20 or 30 different kinds of beer over the years. They do tend to stick to their big production that they do. So yeah, let's move on to the American side of things then, on to Sierra Nevada. So Sierra Nevada Brewing Company, as I've told you before, were founded back in 1979 in Chico in California, when the founders Ken Grossman and Paul Camusi decided to expand their home brewing hobby into a fully fledged brewery. So Ken had fallen in love with Chico while he was visiting friends who studied at the university there, and eventually he opened up a home brewing store, and it was there that he met Paul Camusi, and they began home brewing together. So together they built much of their own equipment, or the original equipment, out of recycled dairy. Dairy tanks and all of this kind of thing, and in 1983 they officially opened their portfolio with 3 different beers, and over the coming years they continually expanded, and then in 1987 they purchased the 20th Street plot that's been the home of the brewery ever since, and the tap room opened up there back in 1989. Paul Camusi decided he was going to retire in 1998 and sold his share of the company to Ken Grossman, who is of course still the majority shareholder in the company. But in 2008 these guys introduced their beer camp event, and since 2010 they've also had partnerships with the new Clairvaux Abbey in Northern California, where they've been producing some Trappist style beers, and hopefully you can see those appear on the channel at some point soon. But in 2012 they announced plans for a second brewery at Mills River in North Carolina, which went on to open in 2014, and that is still there today. It's weird to think that that brewery is going to be coming, it's like 6 years old now, because I still remember when the news was that they were just building that brewery actually. But they've also been credited by the EPA as the Environmental Protection Agency in America, because the brewery runs almost exclusively on renewable energy, so they're also one of the greenest breweries in the world from what I understand. But today they're producing around 1 million barrels of beer per year, and they've apparently had the same brewmaster since 1983, and they've produced hundreds upon hundreds of different kinds of beer. Recently I had the Hoppy 40th anniversary IPA from them, which was really very, very nice. I mean, for me, the kind of classic beers that they have, the sort of classic beers that they have are the you know, the Torpedo, the original Pale Ale and things like this as well. And yeah, you know, these are the ones that you definitely have to have a go at. Torpedo, Bigfoot, I forget what the stout's called, is it the Narwhal? Yeah, I think it is the Narwhal. That's one that's definitely worth looking at as well. So yeah, this is a very, very well respected American craft brewery, one of the premier names, as I say, when it comes to American craft beer production. These guys in Steam were the kind of original Californian craft breweries, if you like, although there are others out there that have been there for a very long time, like North Coast and things like that. But you know, Sierra Nevada were probably the one that made it out of America and told a lot of Europe about the American craft beer scene. Sierra Nevada were one of the first breweries that I kind of ever came across, actually. So yeah, that's all you really need to know about Sierra Nevada as well. A very, very well respected American craft brewer. I always try to review a few beers from these guys every year because they've got so many different things coming out, and you'll never really get a bad beer from Sierra Nevada. Actually, they're very good at the originality when it comes to producing pilsners and lagers and things like that, and when it comes to the West Coast style IPAs, they are very, very nice, actually. So yeah, if you want to learn more, check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and of course you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer itself then. So as I said to you at the start of the video, this one is a 5.8% lager beer. It was released in March of 2020. The hops in this one apparently are Cascade, Centennial and Chinook. So we know Cascade is the kind of classic West Coast high bitterness hop, although it's only 8% alpha acid, which is kind of small these days. Centennial, we know, has a nice kind of lemony sherbet note, and Chinook is the one that you add if you want that big bitterness, you know, the big kind of piney resin notes and the dark grapefruit. But this beer also apparently has a blend, the Bitburger house blend, which is called Zegelhopfen. And this is basically sourced from within the local area of the brewery, which is quite interesting. But this is the second collaboration between Sierra Nevada and Bitburger. The first one was a collaboration where Bitburger went over to the North Carolina brewery and they brewed an Oktoberfest beer. And apparently that was the first time that the Bitburger house yeast strain had ever travelled outside of the brewery, which is pretty cool, actually. So yeah, it's interesting to see that even these bigger companies now in Germany are starting to collaborate with some of the little guys from over in the States, although Sierra Nevada are not so little in the grand scheme of craft beer over in America these days. But yeah, this should be a really interesting one. As I've told you before, I do love a good lager beer. I do wish that they were a bit more available. All the breweries, of course, are producing IPAs and things like that. I think the lager beers have been a little bit neglected in recent times, because, you know, I think you could do some really interesting things by producing, you know, a Nelson Sauvin Pils or a Mosaic Pilsner or something like that. I think there's very interesting things to be had there. But yeah, this one, the thing with there, you can see the nice hop fields there. I don't know, would it be Tettnanger that would be grown in Rheinland-Pfalz? I think over in that western area of Germany it's more likely to be the Tettnanger rather than the Hallertau. I think the Hallertaus are the Bavarian hops, if you remember rightly. But there you can see, there are both the brewery symbols there, Sierra Nevada with its nice kind of scroll, and Bitburger with its distinctive golden letters. And there you can see Bitte ein Bist, please just a little, from Bitburger there. And yeah, I think that is Johann Wallenborn on the top there. I'm not sure if that is Johann Wallenborn, but I'm guessing that it is, because it is the original date there. Johann Peter Wallenborn, Zeit 1817, Zeit 1817. So yeah, 5.8% lager beer, this one. Let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Let's see how we get on with this beer. Yes. This is actually a little bit stronger, I think, than your standard lager, Pilsner type beer. So it might be a little bit more of like an IPL, like an India Pale Lager or something, this one. Because yeah, your standard Pils is usually about 5, I think. So most of them tend to be about between, you know, 4.8 and 5.5, if memory serves correctly. That's your kind of standard German alcohol content. And you can tell with this one, the colour of this is a little bit more ale-like than Pilsner. You do expect the Pilsner to be a little bit brighter than this, of course, though it depends on how long the boil is and what kinds of malt they use. But yeah, I do wonder if this will be a little bit more like an IPL or something like this, and India Pale Lager or something like that. But yeah, lovely. If we shine the light through this, this is a lovely kind of rich ambery colour. You can see there's a solid is that a half or a 2/3? I'd say about a half finger of a frothy, kind of cream coloured head in there. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head. The beer does have a little bit of haze to it, but it's also got a good bit of transparency. So yeah, you know, it has kind of everything you would expect of the style, although it does look a little bit more like an ale rather than a lager beer. Of course, the main difference is the fermentation temperature. You know, lagers are fermented at very low temperatures, like 4 degrees, whereas the ales tend to be around, you know, 10, 11, 12, that sort of thing. But yeah, this one to me definitely looks, the colour of it is a little bit more akin to an ale rather than a kind of lager beer, if you like. So yeah, it looks very, very nice. You can smell some of these lovely hoppy notes coming out of it at the top, but you know, it should be pretty nice, I think. Let's see how we get on with the aroma of this one. Nothing overly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance. Oh yeah, that smells nice. So straight away with this one, you do get that lovely kind of German malt base to it, I would suspect. I don't know, maybe they've got their own malteries and things like that, but I suspect it may well be Weyermann malt or something like that from Bamberg in here. But the question then would be, could Weyermann produce enough to supply everybody else that they supply, and Bitburger as well? I'm not sure, because Bitburg, I think, I don't know if they are the highest by volume producer in Germany. That's an interesting point. But yeah, you can definitely smell that lovely kind of pale malty and bready base that you expect. It's got a lovely kind of German type malt base, that lovely white German bread. As I told you before, when I lived in Germany, I used to love going to the bakery on a Sunday and just getting a bit of bread, sticking some butter on it, a bit of German salami or something. You know, it's just beautiful actually. I do really miss that about Germany, although you can get the Danish salamis and things over here. The Swedish bakers are very good as well, but the German bread is something that I really do miss. You do get German sausages up here, but not quite the same variety and things. But yeah, the aroma of this beer it's quite nostalgic for me actually, going back to this one. So as I say, you've got that nice kind of pale malty base to it. You can get the kind of crisper Pilsner notes out of it. There's a wee bit of that kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing. There's maybe one or two little grainy undertones in there as well. I mean, it's a very typical kind of Pilsner lagery type malt base, this one. It's not doing anything really surprising, but as I say, I like it just because of how kind of nostalgic it is. So yeah, pale malts, a little bit of graininess. You can smell some of the crispness of the Pilsner malts in there, and you've also, there's maybe one or two little woody and grainy notes underneath this one too, and a little bit of biscuity sweetness. So the malt base is not really anything overly surprising. On the hoppy side of things then, you do get a little touch of earthiness out of it, which I would be guessing will be from the Zegelhopfen, the local thing, because with the German hops you always get just a nice little bit of a bright earthiness. There's some distinct kind of noble floral characters with this one. You can also smell some of the brighter floral characters that you'd expect of the Cascade as well. I'm not getting too much of the kind of piney raisins that you'd normally expect from the Chinook, or the kind of spiciness that you might get from Centennial. Not getting too much in the way of that. But there's also a very nice little bit of lighter kind of grassiness in there as well. So the beer comes across as quite light and very sort of crisp, and the fruitiness is coming out really nicely as well. You can definitely get a little bit of that kind of lemon zestiness from the Centennial. That mixes in really well with the kind of more sort of almost like kind of peary, grassy type esters that you'll get from the local German hops in this one. You can really get that in there, and you can pick up little hints of the Cascade. I'm not getting too much of the darker grapefruit that you'd normally expect of the Chinook, right enough. But yeah, it's definitely got a nice kind of typical, that sort of lemony, peary, sort of grassy, zesty type ester that you'd expect of the lager beer, and there is also just a little touch of the darker kind of tropical fruit in there as well. But yeah, I really like how this one, how the aroma of this goes together. It smells very inviting, and for me it's quite a nostalgic beer, this one. So take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma of this one before you get stuck into it, but we're going to have a taste of this now and see how we get on. This one is the Triple Hopped Lager, a collaboration between Bitburger Brauerei in Bitburg, Rheinland-Pfalz in western Germany, and Sierra Nevada, who are originally from Chico in California over on the west coast of America. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers, prost. Yeah, I like that. Let's just say with this one, I mean, straight away, again, it's not doing anything surprising, but it's one of these beers that is just, you know, pretty damn well done. You could easily, you know, tan a few of these and you know, feel very good afterwards. This is a very, very easy drinking beer actually. Yeah, this gets a thumbs up from me. This is nicely done. But when it's these two breweries, you know, you wouldn't really expect anything less. I mean, what I will say is if you are into your IPAs and all this kind of thing, the big beastly beers, this one might not be up your street because it is just an easy drinking beer. I'm personally a big fan of the traditional German beers as well. So this one is one that I like because it's got a little bit of that American kind of thing to it. But it is, you know, kind of classically German. This one really is more of a sort of classically German type beer, I guess you could say. But yeah, this is really pretty solid. I mean, as I say, it's not a beer that's going to blow the head off you, but it's one of these ones that is just really nicely crafted actually, and that's the intention. It kind of showcases the Pilsner style quite well. I mean, the Pilsner of course goes back to the 1800s. It was a German brewmaster. It was a German brewmaster who created that beer in Pilsen over in Bohemia in the Czech Republic. Apparently not a very nice man. But yeah, it was a German brewmaster who actually invented the Pilsner style. You can go and check out my Pilsner Urquell review if you want to learn a little bit more about that. Actually, I do love a Pilsner Urquell every so often. Actually, it's a lovely, lovely beer that. But yeah, drinking Pilsner beers like this, it always just makes me think back to the kind of original Pilsner Urquell, the original source Pilsner, if you like. But this is nice. This is well done. So let's break it down then. Middle of the palate, straight away you can feel that nice kind of pale malty base. That kind of just sits there and blankets the middle of the tongue. If you go towards the back of the palate, you'll start to get the more kind of crisp notes, which is obviously from the Pilsner malt that's been added in here. I can't remember what percentage of Pilsner malt it is that they tend to put in the bases of these beers. I don't know if it's about 20 or 30%, but yeah, usually even with Pilsners it is still majority pale malt from what I gather, at least with the craft pilsners. It might be different for the industrial ones, the larger produced ones like this, but yeah, you do get more of the crispness towards the back of the palate there. As you move further forward, you get a little bit of a biscuity sweetness in the middle of the palate too, and you get one or two kind of grainy notes underneath there as well, but a lovely kind of smoothness, nice little bit of as the biscuity sweetness, like I say, and then the more crisp Pilsner malts come out towards the back of the palate. I would say that the breadiness kind of thickens up a wee bit as you reach the front part of the palate. So back third of the tongue is quite kind of crisp, little almost not quite spicy, but crisp and a little bit drier. Pardon me. As you move further forward from that, you get a nice little bit of a kind of biscuity note out of it, some bready notes underneath, but then as you reach towards the kind of the border with the front third of the tongue, that's where you get the kind of thicker bready notes coming out of this beer. So I do like how the malt base on this one goes together. It does feel a little bit more ale-like in some ways towards the front of the palate compared to the back. The back of the palate feels a little bit like a straight-up lager, but as you move further forward on the palate, it starts to feel a little bit more like a kind of thicker ale, if that makes sense. On the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate, you definitely get a little bit of earthiness out of this one. I think that will be mainly from the Ziegelhopfen. In here, the Bitburger blend, so you get a nice little bit of that in there. It's quite a bright earthiness, as I say. The German noble earthiness I've found does tend to be quite bright, but then as you move further forward along the side of the palate, you can feel it does, the kind of floral qualities do spread a little bit. They become a little bit brighter, so maybe that's Centennial, Cascade and Chinook sort of playing their hand a little bit, and as you reach the front corners of the palate, it does have a nice little bit of it does have a little touch of spiciness to it, but then very quickly it makes another transition, and as you go round the very front curve of the palate, it's just that little bit lighter and grassy, and I think it's the kind of grassiness that sort of lingers there into the aftertaste with this one. So yeah, on the fruity side of things, I mean, again, it is very kind of straight up, this one. I like how the fruity side goes together. So as I always say, the fruity side of the beer comes out in that little oily bubble that you get behind the front curve of your palate there, and the fruity esters just roll their way out. So you've got some really nice, if you go towards the back of that part of your palate, you do get a little bit of the darker grapefruit, which will be both from the Chinook and from the Cascade in there, and as you move further forward from that, it gradually the kind of darker fruity notes, they do spread forward a little bit, but it kind of quickly makes a transition to being more like a kind of peary, sort of citrusy ester. You do get a little bit of the lemon zestiness from the Centennial further forward on the tongue, but yeah, it's mainly a kind of sort of peary, yeah, it's really a peary, kind of grassy, lemony type citrus you get out of this one. That's the majority of the fruity side of this beer, and as you go further into the aftertaste you can feel some of the spicy notes from the floral things kind of pushing their way out, and you also get the a little bit more of that kind of citrusy zestiness coming off the very tip of the tongue as well, which is nice. But I mean, overall, this is a really quite nice beer in terms of it being a sort of, I think it's probably is fair to describe this one as like an IPL, something like that, like an India Pale Lager. You know, I would wonder what temperature they fermented this at, because in some ways it does feel like a lager beer, and in some ways it does actually feel very much like an ale. Like further forward on the palate it really does feel a bit more like an ale, but then at the back of the palate it feels a little bit more like a lager beer. So that would be one of the interesting kind of scientific things to know about this beer. But the main message to take away is that this is a pretty damn nice beer actually. I think it's a bit of a shame if they only produced this as a one-off. It would be cool to see them keep this one in production, so we need to see if that does come to pass. You know, both breweries I think do have the capability of producing this one, but it's probably more likely that it will be produced at the Bitburger Brauerei in Germany rather than at Sierra Nevada, because if it proves to be popular, I think Bitburger are the ones that are most likely to be able to cope with the volume. That Sierra Nevada do have a big production volume, of course, but if they're producing everything else and this, that might be a bit of an ask for them. I don't know though. I don't know. Yeah, a really quite nice sort of IPL type beer, this one. I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink that again. As I say, if you're into your big IPAs and stuff, this isn't a beer that's going to blow the head off you, but for me it's a nice easy drinking one, and it's a style of beer that I do quite enjoy. So yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel then, in terms of the mouthfeel, I would say this is, I would say that this one, it's quite, for a Pilsner or a lager, it is at the top, it is kind of heavier than you might expect. So I'd say that this is a mid-bodied beer. The carbonation is very smooth. It does lean a little bit towards the oily side of things, although in fairness at the back of the palate it does have a bit of crispness to it. Some nice kind of hoppy notes in there. I'd say maybe about 20, 30, I think about 30 IBUs with this one, to be honest, which is the same as Pilsner Urquell. It does have a, pardon me, a little bit of bitterness there, but you have in the malt base of this one, it's very smooth, little touch of sweetness, and you've got some nice kind of fruity qualities coming out of it as well. So overall, a very, very nice beer, this one. I like how it goes together. So yeah, definitely an interesting one, and one that I recommend you have a go at as well. Definitely cool to see one of the big German breweries collaborating with one of the very well respected American ones as well. Sierra Nevada have collaborated with a few different breweries around Germany. They have been going over there a little bit more and doing a few different things. I remember there was the beer from Augsburg that I reviewed for you a while back that was a Sierra Nevada collaboration. So yeah, Sierra Nevada are starting to collaborate with a few more of the traditional breweries in recent times, which is very cool as well. But yeah, check this one out for yourself. A 5.8% Pilsner beer, this one. It's got a lovely kind of oily, fruity character to it as well. Very nicely done, smooth malt base, everything you'd want in terms of mouthfeel, but just a little bit more thick and oily, I think. Definitely more of an IPL, this one, rather than a straight up Pilsner. But a lovely beer, and one that you should have a go at if you get the chance. Let's leave it at that for this one then. This is the Triple Hop Lager, a collaboration between Bitburger in Bitburg, Rheinland-Pfalz in Germany, and Sierra Nevada from Chico, California on the west coast of America. Thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Let me know your own thoughts on this one in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from both breweries, and we will no doubt return to them at some point in the near future. Until the next time, slàinte just now, and I'll catch you guys later. Slàinte, skål, cheers, prost.